evening, everyone, and welcome to Talking Villanova Football with head coach Mark Ferrante. I'm Steve Pennell. We're coming to you live from the Inn at Villanova University, located at 601 County Line Road in Radnor, as the Wildcats improved to 2-0 with a 38-10 win over Lehigh. First off, Coach, congratulations. And I guess let's start in the first half. We'll talk a little bit about, we talked a little before we got on air, a little slower start, maybe offensively. We talked a little bit about the mental penalties and some issues like that. Let's talk a little bit about how we started.
Yeah, the game, similar to the Colgate game, and, you know, it's funny, as we were talking, like you said, before we got on the air, a lot of people have asked me, second game in a row, slow start, and those things, right? So I guess they look at it from an offensive side of perspective, because the two games were 0-0 at the end of the first quarter. Our defense only gave up 3 points in the first two games in the first half, and we've scored 2 defensive touchdowns in the first two games. So our defense has outscored our opponents 14-3 in the first half of the two games. So I guess our defense hasn't started off slow, but when people look at it and you're not putting any points on the board from our side of things, you know, our offense, this week, like the Colgate game we talked about last week, we punted the first couple possessions. We did slow ourselves down with a penalty, but it was more of the holding and the post-snap penalties, and I was excited about coming out of the opening game, how clean we played, and we didn't have mental errors. I guess we saved them up for our second game because our first two possessions on offense, we had a gain of 5 on first down and then a false start. So now 2nd and 5 goes to 2nd and 10. We end up not converting. We punted away. On our second possession, we had a gain of 4 on first down. 2nd and 6 is an on-schedule down. And then, we had a illegal substitution or something. And no, it was another procedure call, actually. And, now 2nd and 6 becomes 2nd and 11, and we don't convert. And then we punted away. And just like the Colgate game, our defense kind of sparked us with that second quarter interception for a touchdown. And that got the ball rolling a little bit. And we were able to put some points on. So in the second quarter, we scored 17, took a 17-3 lead into halftime. And, then we had a pretty good second half from there.
You certainly did. We talk about the second half. I think my thoughts going into halftime is you guys hadn't quite broken that big run yet. It sounded like the running game, it's been effective. It was getting 3 and 4 and 5. I'm thinking they're due to break one here, and then you end up breaking 3 or 4 in the second half.
Well, part of that's what Lehigh was doing and how they defend you. They move their front a lot. They blitz a lot of guys. They bring what we call cross dogs with the linebackers. They bring the safeties down. They had probably 4 or 5 corner blitzes, which you don't get every week. So that takes the offensive lineman a little while to get used to all the movement that's happening up front, and it also takes the running backs a little while to see how the linemen are getting on them and covering them up, because sometimes if it's supposed to hit between the tackle tight end and all of a sudden they're slanting that way, it might bend all the way back behind the center. So it takes a little while for the backs to see it, and it takes a little while for the offensive lineman to be able to get a hat on a hat with all the movement that they're seeing up front, whether it be the slanting and angling of the down linemen or the blitzing of the linebackers and secondary people.
And you talk a little bit. We had Justin on last week, and we've seen Jalen Jackson. Those two guys have been really successful in terms of running the ball. Justin goes over 100 yards again. Jalen breaks a couple of big runs in this game as well. And we were talking a little bit, and we're going to have Ola Adams on a little bit later, your defensive coordinator, about the depth on defense. But the thing I've noticed this year from a fan's perspective is your depth at wideout in terms of your ability to spread the ball out to different people in your offensive game plan. We talked with Coach Bowden last week, and everyone's getting involved.
We've been able to distribute the ball to a lot of different guys, like you just said. So when you look at the first two games, and I just looked at this the other day because it kind of caught me by surprise, to be honest with you. We have 10 touchdowns in 2 games. 8 from offense, 2 from defense. 10 different people have scored those touchdowns. So 6 were receiving touchdowns, 2 rushing touchdowns, and then the 2 interception returns for a touchdown, and it's from 10 different guys. So, it's hard to figure out who to defend and so on. So it's been a really good balanced attack, running to pass. It's been a good opportunity to spread the ball around to different people. Like I said, we've had different leading receivers and different people scoring week to week. So who are you going to focus on? I guess that's a good thing.
And this is a question the coach probably doesn't want to answer, and it's not a good answer. It's not a good question to start with, but all the injuries you've gone through the last 2 years have maybe led to more guys getting opportunity. We talked about we quote-unquote don't return that many starters. We return so many guys that have played. Those 2 years of going through all that adversity and giving some guys opportunities, to me it seems like it's added to your depth. Is that a fair assessment?
Definitely. And I said that in the offseason, because, yes, we have few returning starters on paper. When you look at the starters, what game are you talking about? The preseason starters or the third game starters or the eighth game starters, because our starters have changed throughout the course of the year with some of the other guys going down. But as I said before, it really has given experience to our younger players, our current sophomores and our current juniors, that because of the injuries we had the previous 2 seasons, were forced to play early on, maybe before they were ready to play, but that game experience they've received previous seasons, and now it's their turn to be the new starter, so to speak, gives them an opportunity to be used to game speed and so on.
All right, Coach, we're going to take a quick break. We'll bring defensive coordinator Ola Adams up next. We're live from the Inn at Villanova University, located at 601 County Line Road in Radnor. Tonight's show is presented by Miller Lite, the original light beer brewed for more taste and only 96 calories. Miller Lite, hold true. Back with more Talking Villanova football after this on 610 ESPN. Villanova football head coach Mark Ferrante. We're coming live to you from the Inn at Villanova. Tonight's show is sponsored by Miller Lite, the original light beer brewed for more taste and only 96 calories. Miller Lite, hold true. Coach, we got a special guest, your new defensive coordinator, not new to the staff, but new in his role as defensive coordinator Ola Adams.
Yeah, and Ola's had an interesting career path, to say the least, and I'm going to let him explain to everybody kind of what he's done. But this is his second time as a defensive coordinator, first time with us. So, Ola, welcome. Appreciate you being here. But why don't you tell everybody who's listening, who's here today, kind of how you started coaching and then where you were. You were with our good friend Dan McNeil up there at Cortland. That was your first coordinating experience, and then took a interesting turn from there to end up at our place and then where you are today. So why don't you go ahead and share that with everybody?
Yeah, first, just thanks for having me on the show. But yeah, so I played college football at Concord University in West Virginia. I actually went home, did like 3 or 4 interviews before I decided I wanted to coach. And I called up a former coach of mine that coached me in college, and I told him that I wanted to coach. So he brought me up to Cortland to my first job back in 2009. I was there for 1 year under head coach Dan McNeil, who used to be the defensive coordinator here at Villanova. So that's kind of my connection. I was there for a year, and I remember telling him before I left, I was 22 years old at the time. I told him I wanted to be the youngest defensive coordinator in the country. He kind of looked at me like I was crazy. But that next season when I was at the other school, I actually did a mock interview with him because I was trying to get the defensive coordinator job at Glenville State, where I went next. I didn't get the job, but it just so happened the guy who brought me to Cortland the first time got hired at Syracuse. So Coach McNeil brought me in to be his defensive coordinator when I was 24 years old. I was there for 3 years. My last year there, I interned with the Chicago Bears under Mark Trestman. And now head coach at Colorado, Mel Tucker, was the defensive coordinator. But what happened at Cortland was I kind of feel like I reached my ceiling, and I wanted to coach at this level that I'm currently at. So what I did is I took a wide receiver job at Columbia University. Back in 2014, I was working for head coach Pete Mangurian. He was a longtime NFL guy. I actually interned while I was there for the San Francisco 49ers. So I was coaching receivers at Columbia, but I actually interned at defensive back. So I got to kind of brush up on what I already knew. Then I got the opportunity the following year to come to Villanova as the running backs coach. So, it's kind of a little bit of a whirlwind, coaching defensive backs and going to coaching receivers and then coming here to coach running backs. But, when I look back on it, it's really the best thing that kind of happened to me because it happened at the right time. I was young. I got an opportunity to learn offense inside and out. I think as defensive coaches, we feel like we know what an offense is doing, but we really don't, until you get, inside the room and understand the route concepts, how to block some of the run blocking schemes. So when I was on offense, I kind of felt like I was a narc, trying to gain, as much information as I can get, and it's really paid off. I feel a lot more comfortable in my role as defensive coordinator than I did the first time when I was 24. I kind of figured it out. But now it's a lot easier to kind of know tendencies and what offenses are doing. So very thankful for Coach Ferrante. Even after I was running back coach, promoted me to getting back on defense to coach cornerbacks, and I did special teams, which was also a new experience.
Right.
And that definitely put a lot on my plate, but it was an awesome opportunity, and then here we go today.
So when I took over 3 seasons ago, Tony Trisciani left to go to Elon.
Yep.
And I'm on my way to the national convention, which in one aspect could be a great place to be when you have a job available, because you can get to a lot of people in a short period of time. But Tony let me know when I landed in Nashville that was happening. So there was no
But that word spreads like
preparation.
wildfire in the coaching
By
profession.
the time I got to the airport to the hotel, there was a number of people that knew we had a job. But the first person to call me about our defensive back job was our current running back coach at the time, Ola Adams. He's the one that called me first before, he had inside trader information, right? So he knew that job was going to open. So before I got to the hotel, Ola was hitting me up to ask to go back on defense. And I know exactly what Ola's talking about because my whole upbringing, playing and initial years of coaching, I was always an offensive guy. But when Coach Talley hired me here in 87, 88, 89, I coached defense. And when I went back from defense to offensive line, I really understood what the defensive people were trying to do much better. It made me a better coach as an offensive line coach, having spent those 2 seasons on defense. So exactly the same thing, just in reverse order. So that is great.
Yeah. I really think what you learn through the experience is coaching is coaching.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel like I coach a position. I feel like I'm coaching people.
Mm-hmm.
And my biggest thing is trying to get the players to take on kind of my personality. I would say I'm aggressive. I want to instill confidence in my players. And honestly, I just want them to play hard, every snap. And I know that sounds simple, but, that's something that we talk about daily. And it's always something that we're working at. You can never play hard every play and all the time. So it always gives me something to talk to our players about to kind of keep them on their toes, make sure they're giving the proper effort, because you can never come up with a perfect defense. Sometimes I may make a bad call, but our players play so hard. They make up for my mistakes, they cover up for each other's mistakes, and that's what I think the biggest difference in this year is.
Let me ask you this, Coach Inola. Does it make a difference that Ola was on your staff last year. He knows the personnel. He coached the D-back, so he's got a good relationship with those guys. Is that an easier transition to go from position coach to coordinator with the same program than it is, let's say he came from school X and he came into Villanova and be the coordinator?
Can I answer that
I'll
question?
let Ola answer that. I personally think it helps, but I'll let Ola go ahead and answer that one.
I'll be honest. A lot of people don't know what happened last year, but I ruptured my patellar tendon the first practice that we had, and I had to go home for about a couple weeks because I couldn't walk, and then when I came back, I had to watch practice from the window for about a week or two, and then I was out at practice in a golf cart for a long time. So at the end of the day, I didn't get to coach my guys hands-on as far as the defensive backs, and Coach Ferrante really stepped up big for me, and he started to run my meetings while I was at home. So thank goodness for the internet and some of those things, we were able to tie everything together and kind of get on the same page. But I always still ask myself the question, would he have hired me if he was not in my room and got a chance to see how I coach my guys, how I interact with them? I think he got a lot of insight, to playing the position of defensive back, but just the relationship that I had with my players. So personally, I think that went a long way and giving me this opportunity, because I know, anybody would love to have this job, but me personally, it's definitely an opportunity that I'm thankful for.
Coach, what did you see in Ola that you thought he's going to make a good defensive coordinator?
Well, when I was the offensive line coach, Ola was our running back coach. So, we worked together. So that was part of the evaluation. Obviously, I knew him as a coach. And as Ola just said, and I believe the same thing, I believe coaching is motivating, coaching is teaching, coaching is communicating. And if you do those things well, the position – you can learn. I didn't know anything about offensive line technique when I took over offensive line, and if you're a good teacher, good motivator, it can get your guys going in the right direction. Then I think a good coach can coach any position, and Ola has proven that as well, just listening to the places he's been and the positions he's coached. So the other thing is when he was on the shelf last year, and I took over his Indy and those type of things, he really sent it to us. And the way he coaches his players, they were almost running the practice in that individual period more than I was. I was just doing what I could to do to fill in. And it just so happens that, last year we led the conference in interceptions. So I'm taking full credit for that part.
You're the head coach. You get all the credit. That's how it works. Before we take any more credit, though, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to bring Ola Adams back for another segment. We're live from the Inn at Villanova University, located at 601 County Line Road in Radnor. Tonight's show is presented by Miller Lite, the original light beer brewed for more taste and only 96 calories. Miller Lite, hold true. Back with more of Talking Villanova football after this on 610 ESPN. Villanova football head coach Mark Ferrante. We're live at the Inn at Villanova University, located at 601 County Line Road in Radnor. Tonight's show is presented by Miller Lite, the original light beer, brewed for more taste and only 96 calories. Miller Lite, hold true. We're joined by defensive coordinator Ola Adams. And Ola, before we had an opportunity to come on the air, I was talking to Coach a little bit about your depth, especially up front in the line, where I've talked to Coach over the years. A lot of schemes, 3-3-5, a little bit, because it's tougher at this level to find linemen, right? There's not as many 6'4", 265-pound guys going on. It seems like you've been able to run 6 and 7 guys out there with a consistency of play and effort.
Yes, the biggest thing for me, we believe in a 3-down defense. Not that we can't recruit it. I believe you can recruit anything you put your mind to. That's really my belief when it comes to recruiting. But I've ran a 3-down front since 2009, so it's really, my strength. I'm not as strong as a coach in a 4-down. But the offenses that we're facing these days, with all the RPOs, it helps if you have 3 defensive linemen that can eat up 5 offensive linemen. And the variation that we use makes it hard for those 5 offensive linemen to latch on to our 3 defensive linemen. So for me, that's an advantage for us as far as freeing up our linebackers and allowing them to make plays. And we're also inserting our secondary, into the front 7 also to give ourselves an advantage. So when it comes down to it, it definitely helps to have depth in the defensive line. To be honest, we probably have about 7 or 8 guys. A couple that we're still developing. Sometimes guys are young and need a few weeks to develop. So I think we have a tier of guys, of freshmen, that you're going to start to see a little bit more of as the season progresses. So again, just having depth up front is key. I think the game is won up front. It makes my job as a secondary coach a lot easier when we have guys that can rush the passer. So really our deal is to try to stop the run on 1st and 2nd down and get into good 3rd down situations so that we can create the advantage for ourselves.
And that's been a common question I've been getting, Ola. We are still listed as a 3-down front. And as you mentioned, that's what you learned when you were up at Coach Mack up at Cortland. They used to come down and visit us when he was at Cortland with Coach Mack and share the ideas of the 3-man front and all those things. So the question that people keep asking me is, how different are we, even though we're listed the same? And how I don't want to give out too much, but I'll let you answer it from a defensive coordinator's perspective.
I guess I'll tell you a simple thing. So if it's Colgate game planning against what we did last year, we didn't run a single play from our scheme last year versus Colgate. Everything was based on how do we stop this team. So at the end of the day, we have some concepts from last year, but the reality is we're doing a lot of different things up front, whether it's blitzes, whether it's with the defensive line. You say 3 down, but we're showing a lot of different fronts. So I'm not going to sit here and say exactly what we're doing verbatim, but there's a lot of variation in what we're doing.
Right.
It's pretty hard to figure out who's coming, who's aligning where, what the tendencies are, because we create the tendencies just so we could break them and create an advantage for ourselves. So, a 3-3 front is very similar, but again, a lot of different variation. And you can have the same offensive scheme or same defensive scheme with a different play caller, and it will be viewed differently. Right. So I really believe it's all about, preparing for each opponent. Every week we're trying to do exactly what it takes to stop whoever we're playing. We're never going to look the same from week to week. Just like offenses game plan and create new plays to break their tendencies, we try to do the same.
Right, and same thing with offense. When Chris was here last week, we're still in the shotgun. We didn't go from shotgun to under center. We're still a zone read, RPO, run, pass, balance, attack. So that's what we've always tried to do, but we're different. We're different because, as Ola just mentioned, we have a different play caller, sometimes different personnel groupings, even though it's on paper the same 5 offensive linemen, 1 back, 1 or 2 tight ends, 2 or 3 wideouts. It's the same group of people, but you're just doing some different things with them. So
you got 11 guys, you got to line them up somewhere, I guess, and they all line up, and then from there it all changes.
Right. But I also look like the keep it simple mentality, so it's checkers, it's not chess. Let's not make it too complicated.
But we do talk now. Let's talk a little bit about you still coach the defensive backs as well as being the coordinator. You've had this group last year, and you've had some outstanding players. We talk about Christian Benford, Jaquan Amos, the FCS Defensive Player of the Week in Week 0 against Elijah Trent with a pick 6. A lot of these kids you've recruited as well. And just talk about the maturity and growth. It's a young group back there. And talk about their maturity. And I was talking about, you guys have scored 2 touchdowns in 2 weeks. You keep that up and get 11, 12 touchdowns. Your coach will be real happy with you.
He'll definitely be happy. To be honest, I believe the meeting room is the best place in the world. I really enjoy the time that I spend, with my group. It's been awesome to see those guys grow from the time I met them to where they're at now. It's almost amazing. Guys like Elijah Trent, who was a receiver in high school, he had around 10 offers at wide receiver, and I just told him, I said, hey, I really believe in you. I see you as a Richard Sherman type of cornerback. You're 6'2", 6'3". There's not too many of your type that are out there. So just our relationship, and he believed in me. I believed in him. I think that's why he chose to come here. And it's funny, the first game versus Temple, I didn't expect him to play last year, and he made the game-winning interception. Yep. So this offseason and this year, to watch his growth and his dedication, he's as good as a starter, to me. So it's our job to get him on the field as much as possible. Jaquan Amos is a guy who I see as a football savant. I tell everybody that asks me, I tell them he's the smartest player I've ever coached. I taught him our whole playbook when he was a true freshman in 3 days. If you think about that, that's pretty amazing. He knew he could draw all 11 players on our defense in 3 days. So now we're able to move him around in different spots and get a guy like Elijah Trent on the field more because of his smarts. Christian Benford is now a sophomore. My biggest thing with him is making sure he's not complacent because he had a successful first year. But he's an elite player. He's also very smart, just like Jaquan. So, their versatility, I think, is really what separates us. And not only, do you talk about the best players in the room, I really take pride in everybody that's in my room. I don't care if you're a walk-on, if nobody expects much out of you. I think to go back to coaching different positions, it's coaching a mindset. It's coaching a mindset that, hey, you can always get better. There's always room to improve. If you take this mindset from this meeting room and on the field to the real world, you're going to win. That's what I coach. So, I have a motto, and my players, at first they thought I was crazy, but, to be honest, we talk about $1 million. We talk about it every day. And it's about, hey, I recruited you here because I think you have potential to play at the next level. But, hey, you're also at one of the best schools in the country. So if you don't make it, go be the boss at where you're going to work. Don't be content on just being an employee. If you're just a regular employee, try to move up in the company that you're in. So it's just a mindset. It's $1 million mindset, not all about actual money. It's about bettering yourself and just doing the best you can at everything you do. So I love the guys in my room. They make it easy to wake up in the morning and come to work. I really wouldn't rather be with any other group, in the country.
Yeah, and it's a mindset for life, right?
Yeah,
we want them to attack their academics and what they do in school as much as they attack what they do in the weight room, or obviously attack what they do on the field from a competitive nature. And our guys buy into that, and Ola definitely has his room thinking in those terms. And, you'll see a lot of different guys play, and you'll see a lot of different guys in Ola's room play multiple positions. Like we was talking about Jaquan Amos. He's a corner. Then we need to put Elijah Trent in the corner. We need to move him to nickel back or to one of the safety positions or our spur positions or something like that. And he can play them all because he, does have a real good football IQ and so on and so forth. And a lot of them do, and that's how Ola instructs them. He wants them all to get that way, and, they work at it. And, I think all of our coaches do that for the most part.
That's great, Coach. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to bring up one of those guys that's in his room. Forrest Ryan, our junior linebacker, will join us next. We're live from the Inn at Villanova University, located at 601 County Line Road in Radnor. Tonight's show is presented by Miller Lite, the original light beer brewed for more taste and only 96 calories. Miller Lite, hold true. Back with more talking Villanova football after this on 610 ESPN. Welcome back to Talking Villanova Football with head coach Mark Ferrante. We're coming live from the Inn at Villanova University, located at 601 County Line Road in Radnor. We're joined by junior linebacker Forrest Ryan. Coach, one of your three captains. He's off to a pretty good start. He's led the team in tackles the first two games with 8 against Colgate and a career-high 10 against Lehigh. A two-time All-State honoree at Waynesboro Area High School in Pennsylvania, and then the 2018 CA Academic Award honoree. So a well-rounded young man you got there.
Yeah, no doubt. Good to have you here, Forrest. Appreciate you spending time with us. Forrest, we changed up our way we selected captains this year. And normally the captains are voted for in the spring. So the freshmen, when they come in every year, they kind of inherit their captains. Their captains are already chosen prior to them arriving. So for whatever reason, we talked in the offseason, talking with the staff, talking with the players. You know, I meet with each player postseason and post-spring one-on-one every year just to get a feel for, you know, where they're at and individually, and then what they're thinking about the team collectively and so on. And so we waited to vote for captains this year. And the other thing that a lot of places do, and we've done it here for years and years, is usually you say, okay, here's the list of seniors, vote for your captains, because, you know, the most experienced players, they kind of know what your culture is at the time and so on and so forth. And, you know, not that you can't write someone else in if you believe it, but the other thing I changed up this year is the whole roster's open for captains. It's not just going to be a senior selection or a senior option. And so I had everyone available, and I told the team that. And then I took it to another level in talking with our staff in the off season and heading into the summer. I said, okay, all 88 of you, we have 88 on the roster right now, all 88 of you are eligible to be voted for captain. However, those of you that want to be a captain, come fill out a captain application. And I only received 12 back. So there was 12 guys that were
freshmen knew their place.
That list. Well, there was one freshman out of the 12, so that was interesting. But, you know, Forrest came in and took the time to fill out an application, and then those 12 guys during the first week of preseason stood up in front of the whole team and explained to the team why they wanted to be captain. So a little more involved with our selection of captains this year than we had in previous years. And Forrest is the only junior that was selected captain, so congratulations to that. But he does things right all the time, in the classroom, on the field, in the weight room, and I wasn't surprised that Forrest was selected captain, to be honest with you.
Forrest, not to rehearse your speech, but what did you get up in front of the team and say?
Well, the first thing that I talked about was how I felt that everybody in the room should have put in their own application. Because we constantly talk about, and whether it be in the weight room with Coach Tuck or with Coach Ferrante, that we're all captains in our own way. We're all leaders. And we all hold each other accountable into a standard of perfection. And so that's why I said that I put my name in the ballot. But then I talked about why I want to be a leader in my life. And the real reason for that is my mother. I talked about how, like, I always envied, like, the type of person that she was. And I envied how she led my family. And I said to myself, I want to lead my family that way someday. And right now, Villanova football is my family. So that's why I decided to try to be captain.
That gets my vote.
Yeah, no doubt. No, he did a great job, and he does a great job on a day-to-day basis, and now, there's just the work ethic he puts in and the type of person that he is. It's obviously paying dividends on the field, as you mentioned, leading team in tackles for 2 games in a row.
Now, Forrest, you got on the field your first 2 years. I saw you in a lot of special teams roles your first 2 years, and we were talking about the different maturation of players. Christian Benford was ready to step in right away as a freshman. Obviously, cornerback's a lot different than playing linebacker physically and the things you need to do. But talk about your growth within the program when you came in out of high school, the big adjustment from obviously playing high school football to football at this level, and just kind of how the process has worked for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been it's more of like a mental thing too. When you get to college, there's so many things you have to go into, and so many different coaches and players, and everybody's great, and coming from a school where I came from a very small school. I was the first Division I football player at my school in 15, 20 years. So that was definitely a big adjustment, but just like coming in and playing with great players, like I truly do believe we're the linebacker U of FCS. Austin Cleacher the year before I came in, Don Cherry before that, Ed Shockley, Steve, everybody. Drew Wiley he's like my quote-unquote big brother. So now playing next to him has just been great, and those guys pulling you along really just like keeps you humble as a freshman and then as a sophomore and now my junior year. So.
And how do you think, I asked this to Cov because he's a captain as well, and I asked him this last week when he was on. How do you feel the chemistry is with the team this year and maybe years past and so on?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely I think it's definitely growing. I think that we all, rely on each other. And the big thing that we kind of started this week, you might have seen it, was this. This just means together. And, together, we're strong, and together we can do anything. And that's been our team motto kind of moving forward through this week. And just, I think we're going to keep that going through the season. And everybody's just kind of buying into what, we know we have to be better,
And I've seen the 88 strong, and now I know where that comes from. Your 88 guys, everyone's in it together. The whole roster's in it together. Forrest, we're going to take a quick break and have you stay for one more segment if you could. So we're live from the Villanova University, located at 601 County Line Road in Randers. Tonight's show is presented by Miller Lite, the original light beer brewed for more taste and only 96 calories. Miller Lite, hold true. Back with more talking Villanova football after this on 610 ESPN.
We'll be right back.
We're back at the end at Villanova University, located at 601 County Line Road in Radnor for the Mark Ferrante Show. Coach, we're joined by junior linebacker Forrest Ryan, one of your captains, as you mentioned this year. Forrest, one of the things I wanted to ask you about, you had a change in both positions, your position coach and your coordinator. You talked about a lot of different coaches coming to college. Talk a little bit about, I know Coach Adams is still in the room, so we're going to have to say nice things about him. But just talk a little bit about the transition that you guys have made defensively. Yeah,
the transition has been great. Actually, what we do in our linebacker room every day is we say something that we've been grateful for. And something I've been grateful for has been the coaching changes, just like in the manner, not anything bad about the old coaches, just in the manner that we're coming together more as a coaching staff to the players. And I feel like, especially in Coach Reed room, who's the new linebacker coach, we're real students of the game. Like Coach Ola was talking about. With Jaquan knowing all the positions, that's something that has changed this year. Is last year I only played outside linebacker, and Amin only played middle linebacker, and Keeling only played outside. And this year I play all three, and most of us play 2 to 3 positions. So, and that really helps. If somebody goes down, somebody can step right in, and you have experience in that position. And that's just one of the big things that we've been working on, and I really appreciate.
And Coach Reed, Dave's coached every level in our defense, so he probably knows our defense. Now this has Ola's twist to it,
Sure.
but he probably understands the front, the middle, and the back end almost as well as anybody. And what we had, some of the other changes we made is, Dave was the safeties coach. Ola was the corners coach. Well, now they're all in the same room, so they're hearing the same language as opposed to getting kind of the same coverages but in 2 different voices. So I think that's helped a little bit in the back end. And then Dave going up to the middle level after having experienced what the guys up front are doing and what the guys behind them are doing. So now Dave's coaching the linebackers, and same thing, Ola's approach, Dave's approach, a lot of our approach. You'll see it with Sean in the offensive line. If we need to put a sub in, we won't necessarily put the next tackle in. We might move a guard to tackle and put the next guard in, as opposed to, you don't always have just this one guy backing up one position and so on. So, and with 88 guys, it sounds like a lot, especially for, a high school person listening to, wow, we have 88 people on the roster, but we're probably one of the lowest rosters in our league. So depth can be an issue. So you cross-train guys as much as you can, because, we just don't have as many guys.
And you have 88, but you also have a lot of specialty guys, kickers, punters, and snappers. And you have a lot of depth this year at quarterback, the way your roster fell. So those guys aren't really versatile and move around type people. So it makes a big difference. And since I brought up quarterback, I want to ask Forrest a little bit. Daniel Smith has come in. He's a transfer from Campbell down south, comes in and is kind of, it seems from an outsider's perspective, coming in really and been embraced by the group offensively and defensively. Talk a little bit just about, how does that happen? He comes in July. You guys have been working your tail off all spring. And then this new person comes in. He's got to be a heck of a kid and a heck of a hard worker for you guys to kind of surround yourself with him and just be all in with what he's doing for you.
Yeah, well, Daniel Smith is actually my roommate, so
so we're gonna get a first-hand account here today.
Yeah, no, he's actually unbelievable. And I even talked to him. I was just like, Dan, you had to have been a junior captain at Campbell, right? And he was like, yeah. He's really an unbelievable guy. He came in. I think he might have known everybody's names on the second day or before he even came in. Honestly, he constantly had his family around, just like including everybody, and just like make sure he's checking up on everybody, getting people's phone numbers, things like that. And like that just kind of like made us feel like, okay, like he's been here for a while, even though he hadn't. And just like constantly making himself available, always asking the receivers to get extra work and stuff, and we really appreciate that. Obviously, any team's going to want a guy that's going to work hard, and we obviously know how talented he is on the field, just looking at the things that he did at Campbell, and we get excited about that too. So
I think it speaks volumes for not only Dan, the way he came in and inserted himself with our team, but also the type of guys we have on the team.
Definitely. That's kind of the point I was making.
To embrace them, and allow them. And I mentioned it last week because you asked me about Dan after the Colgate game. They're there all month of July. The whole team's here in July for that second session summer school. And whenever Dan was in there, Kadir was in there with him. Jack was in there with him. J.J. Scarpella was in there with him. And they were teaching him what they had known or learned from Coach Bowden in the spring. So it really goes hand in hand. It's a two-way street as far as that's concerned. How Dan came in And, he wasn't cocky at all. He just came in and competed and earned the position. And how our guys embraced him when he did come in, because it can be challenging when you have a guy coming in. It's not a freshman transfer starting at the ground. This guy had started for 2 years at Campbell, had a pretty good run over at Campbell, graduated in 3 years, so he's a grad student. And it just kind of worked both ways, and I think that speaks volumes about the type of guys we have in our program.
Well, Forrest, we appreciate you taking the time to join us. I want to wish you best of luck Saturday up at Bucknell. We'll take a quick break. We'll be back to discuss those Bucknell Bison. We're live from the Inn at Villanova University, located at 601 County Line Road in Radnor. Tonight's show is presented by Miller Lite, the original light beer brewed for more taste and only 96 calories. Miller Lite, hold true. Back with more Talking Villanova football after this on 610 ESPN. Back here at the Inn at Villanova, located at 601 County Line Road, for Talking Villanova football with head coach Mark Ferrante. Coach, we didn't get a chance to talk about a little bit about the game day atmosphere on Saturday. We had a great crowd, great turnout. Really proud of our students. They really showed out for the game, and then your kids put on a great performance.
Yeah, it was really awesome home opener. The crowd was electric, a lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm. That's probably the best student section that I've seen in a long time. The home side obviously is usually crowded, but then when you get the visitor side to be crowded as well, and I know Lehigh brought some, but I think it was pretty much predominantly a Villanova crowd. So that was really great. I really appreciate the student support there, and obviously all the support from the fans that we have. We have a good local following, people that come to the radio show on a weekly basis and so on, and a lot of people that come out to practice from time to time. But it was a really good atmosphere. I don't know if it was because it was our first home game. I don't know if it was because it was a 6 o'clock start versus a 1 or a 3:30 or something like that. But we're on the road for the next 2 weeks. I think we have 2 more 6 o'clock games back to back at Bucknell and Towson, and then we're coming home again in Maine. So I'm hoping we can duplicate that environment and that atmosphere when we do get back on our campus.
Yeah, I know Mark Jackson, the athletic director, has worked very hard to try to find that right mix to increase the atmosphere around it in terms of in terms of getting people to come out and support this team. And I think I've been coming to the game since the program's been back, and it's just you have a great group of young men. I've been fortunate enough to meet a handful of them and more. It's just these kids deserve your support. I mean, they do it in the classroom, they do it on the field, they play hard, they represent Villanova in such a fine way, and I think it's great to see people come out and support all their hard work.
Yeah, no doubt. It was good, and I think maybe having beer sales in the stadium might help bring the crowd in a little bit.
Adult beverages, as we like to call them.
There you go.
But honestly, we're talking about trying to create that college football atmosphere, and I guess for better or worse, beer is a part of college football and always has been. And if it's done responsibly, it's a great thing to enjoy a game. And like I said, the beer garden's in the end zone. But like I said, I think the student turnout was great. And I think we Parents Weekend will be our next home game. We usually get a good crowd, but we need the students to bring that atmosphere and to bring that energy to the stadium.
Yeah, if they keep coming like they did the other day, that'll be great. And we got the support of the band and the dance and the cheer and all those folks there. And they do a great job. We do our Wildcat Walk before the game. That's something we started a couple years ago, and they really lead us into that. We go through the tailgate area. Joe Maycoid and their football club people back there with the other tailgaters. They have a great time back there and have a really nice crowd. So it's really helped, and the environment this past weekend was really shown that there's a lot of support there behind the program.
Coach, we're going to make this one a short segment. We'll take a quick break, and we'll come back and talk about Bucknell as we get ready for this week's game. We're live from the Inn at Villanova University, located at 601 County Line Road in Randers. Tonight's show is presented by Miller Lite, the original light beer brewed for more taste and only 96 calories. Miller Lite, hold true. Back with more talking Villanova football after this on 610 ESPN. Ferrante, we're talking Villanova football. Coach, you guys get on the bus and head up to Lewisburg, PA this Saturday for a 6 o'clock kickoff with the Bucknell Bison. They come in 0-2. They lost an FBS game to Temple early in the season, and last week were defeated by Sacred Heart 30-10. What can you tell us about the Bison?
Yeah, it's going to be different as far as the style of team that we're playing compared to the Lehigh team that we just faced. Lehigh blitzes more, as I said in the previous segment. They slant and move their linemen a lot more, do a lot more pressure. And sometimes, as I mentioned earlier, that takes you a little while to get used to it. But then if you hit a seam going against what they're doing, that's when you have those big plays. Bucknell isn't quite as they don't take as many chances, if you will, on defense. They blitz less, so they're usually going to be in the right gap at the right time. They're going to be physical. They're well coached. Coach Giacchini has been a head coach before. He's been in the league before. He's coached at Lehigh and so on. He played at Lehigh, so he knows Northeast football. It's not like he hasn't been from the area, and they're going to be disciplined. They're going to play sound football, and we got to go out and execute what we're trying to do on the offensive side of things. We maybe should have talked to Ola about this a little bit. In the first two games, they've played three different quarterbacks.
I saw that. They list all three as the number one on their depth chart.
Right, and and it's not like it's what they're doing right now. It's not like, oh, this guy's not getting it done, let's pull him and put another guy in. They rotate guys, kind of like we were saying. We don't. Our quarterbacks play quarterback, and we usually don't rotate through, but they'll rotate guys. So Ola and I talked about it. He talked to me about it earlier in the week where, depending on which one of them is in, you may have a little bit of a different script. He's more of the run guy, so let me pull off this column. This guy's going to run a lot less. He's more of the pocket passer. Let me pull this column. And you do that anyway as a defensive play caller because, based on you look for personnel groupings, who's coming out,
Sure.
How many wideouts versus how many running backs versus how many tight ends, what's the down and distance. So you're looking at all the situational stuff anyway. But now when it's a different quarterback along with third and short, third and long, all the different things that go into it, it makes it a little more challenging from time to time. So we'll put a good plan together. And the bottom line is, and we talk to our guys all the time, it doesn't matter what their record is. It doesn't matter what our record is. Let's focus on how we're preparing. First of all, let's go out and perform hopefully on a consistent level. If we continue to make fewer mistakes than our opponent, if we continue to protect the football the way we have with no turnovers and maybe get some in our favor, then I think we have a chance regardless of who we're playing. So it's more on the approach of how are we preparing. Yes, you have to look at what they're doing. You have to get ready for their schemes on offense and their schemes on defense and what they're doing on special teams. They have an All-American punter, probably the best punter we'll face all
remember
year.
Him from last year.
He's a really good player. So, they have a few other guys. They have a wideout number 5. I don't have all their names off the top of my head. I don't have it in front of me. But number 5, who I believe went to St. Joe's Prep, he'll look to have a big game against Villanova because he's, a local guy here, and he's done a really good job in the previous 2 games that they've had. So, you don't look at the records. You look at how are we preparing. Let's go out there, perform at a consistent level. Let's clean up our penalties that we've had, try to minimize that. Let's continue to take care of the football, and let's see if we can get to 1-0 this week.
Well, Coach, I want to wish you the best of luck. Look forward to seeing you up Saturday up in Lewisburg, PA. It's in the middle of God's country up there. Should be a good trip. And that wraps up Talking Villanova Football with head coach Mark Ferrante. Tonight's show is presented by Miller Lite, the original light beer brewed for more taste and only 96 calories. Miller Lite, hold true. Thanks to our hosts, the Annie at Villanova University. Thanks to Joe Gaines and Ryan Lennox back at the studio. Tune in to 610 ESPN when Villanova takes on Bucknell this Saturday, September 14th. Game time is 6 o'clock. Pre-game show begins at 5:45. Our next Talk in Villanova football will be next Tuesday, September 17th at 7 p.m. For Coach Mark Ferrante, this is Steve Pannone. Thanks for listening to 610 ESPN.